Okay, in this demo I'm going to create a simple scene with a LensFlare, a SkyBox and a terrain. So the first thing I'm going to create is my LensFlare. So I'll right click on root node and select new node type, and I'll add a LensFlare. So we have this LensFlare creation dialog, which basically allows us to select 4 images for our LensFlare. So we'll add image 0 in test, and we have a directory called lens here. So this is the flare 1, load that, flare 2, load that, image 2, 3, load, and finally 4. So we've created our LensFlare, and we can see this if we move around here. So our LensFlare is currently at position 0, 0, so let's move it up into the lights position by putting the translation at 100 and the Z at 100, and let's move the Y up pretty high, so 250. Done. Also, let's take off the culling of this LensFlare and call him never. So theoretically our LensFlare should be around here somewhere. There he is. Okay, so now let's create our terrain. So select the root node and click new node type and select add terrain, and we have a number of different terrains that we can add, generated from either a midpoint height map, hill height map, fault fractal, or loaded from an image. So let's just select hill height map with some default values that were taken from the test source code. In the details here, name is obviously terrain, size 129, block size 33, and the step scale x 1 and 10. So 10, 10, 10, 1, 10. So let's create that terrain. So there's our terrain created, and let's go to the top of this terrain, and here we go. So that's our terrain with our LensFlare. So now let's texture this terrain by basically selecting the terrain page and selecting procedural texture generator. Okay, so here now we can add a number of images that we want for our terrain. So let's select data, texture, terrain. We'll go base rock, and we'll add another one which would be dark rock. We'll add another one which would be grass, nice grass. Okay, so for the first one we'll say the low is minus 64, optimal 0, and the high is 128. Apply. For this we'll say the low is 64, the optimal is 128, and the high is 256. Apply. And for this we'll say the low is 128, optimal is 256, and high is 512. Apply. So we can preview this, and so that's our terrain texture. So we create that, and we can look around our terrain, and you can see that it's textured using our procedural texture generator. So the next thing that we need is a SkyBox. So let's add a SkyBox into our root node, select the SkyBox, and we can edit the SkyBox. So now let's select our images that we want to use for our SkyBox, which I have in here. Oops, sorry. SkyBox. So north, load, south, load, east, load, west, load, up, load, and down, load. So let's create our SkyBox. Now we need the SkyBox to track with the camera, so we can right click on the SkyBox and utils, track with camera. But the problem is that now our SkyBox is the only thing rendered. So we need to reorganize our children in the root node, so we can push our SkyBox up, and we push them up to there. Done. So let's select our terrain again, and let's select the top from our terrain. So now we can see our terrain generated with a SkyBox and a LensFlare.